A millionaire burst into laughter when he heard the 9-year-old son of his cleaning lady claim he spoke perfect Chinese. But what the boy did next left the millionaire absolutely speechless. William Peterson adjusted his $25,000 Rolex. The sound of expensive leather shoes echoed through the marble hallway of Peterson Tech Industries as 43-year-old William Peterson adjusted his $25,000 Rolex. The building's 68th floor offered a breathtaking view of downtown Chicago, but William barely noticed anymore. After building a tech empire worth $800 million, he had grown accustomed to looking down on everything and everyone below. His corner office was a shrine to his own success, filled with awards, luxury art pieces, and photographs of himself shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. William thrived on one thing more than his wealth: the power to humiliate those he deemed inferior. Every morning he would find new ways to remind his employees of their place in his carefully constructed hierarchy. The cleaning staff, security guards, and maintenance workers were his favorite targets. To William, they were nothing more than necessary annoyances, people who existed solely to make his life more comfortable. He took pleasure in their discomfort, in watching them shrink away when he spoke to them with calculated cruelty. That Tuesday morning started like any other, with William reviewing quarterly reports while sipping his $300 imported coffee. His assistant knocked on the door, announcing that the cleaning crew had arrived early for their weekly deep cleaning. William's eyes lit up with malicious anticipation. He had been waiting for this opportunity all week. The crew consisted of Maria Santos, a hard-working single mother in her 30s, and her 9-year-old son Diego, who sometimes helped her during school breaks to earn extra money for their family. Maria had been cleaning William's building for nearly 6 years, always arriving on time, always doing impeccable work, always staying invisible as William preferred. She had learned to keep her head down, speak only when spoken to, and never make eye contact with the man who paid her wages. Her son Diego was different, though. Unlike his mother, who had been worn down by years of disrespect, Diego carried himself with quiet dignity and an intelligence that seemed to shine from his dark eyes. William watched through his office window as Maria and Diego set up their cleaning supplies in the hallway. A cruel smile spread across his face as he formulated his latest game of psychological torture. He had recently acquired an ancient Chinese manuscript from an estate auction, a document that several university professors had declared impossible to translate due to its complex classical characters and archaic dialect. William saw this as the perfect weapon to demonstrate the intellectual superiority that his money had supposedly bought him. William pressed his intercom button with the excitement of a predator spotting vulnerable prey. "Send the cleaning woman and her boy to my office immediately," he commanded his assistant. Within minutes, Maria appeared at his door, pushing her cart of supplies while Diego followed behind, carrying a bucket and mop. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she knocked on the open door. After 6 years of working in this building, she knew that being summoned to William's office was never a good sign. Come in," William said with false cheerfulness, gesturing for them to enter his opulent office. Maria stepped inside cautiously, her eyes fixed on the floor, while Diego looked around with curiosity at the expensive artwork and panoramic city view. William noticed the boy's interest and felt a surge of irritation. How dare this child from a poor family look at his possessions with anything other than complete submission and awe? "Maria, I want you to tell your son exactly what you do here every day," William began, his voice dripping with condescension. Maria's face flushed with embarrassment as she realized what was coming. "I clean the offices, sir," she whispered, barely audible. "Speak up," William barked, causing both mother and son to flinch. "I clean the offices, bathrooms, and common areas," Maria repeated louder this time, her voice shaking with humiliation. William walked around his desk like a shark circling its prey, enjoying every moment of their discomfort. "And what's your education level, Maria?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from her employment file. "I finished high school, sir," Maria responded, her cheeks burning with shame. Diego watched his mother being humiliated and felt something fierce awakening in his chest. For 9 years he had watched his mother work herself to exhaustion to provide for their family, never complaining, always maintaining her dignity despite the disrespect she faced. "High school," William repeated mockingly, throwing his head back in exaggerated laughter. "Just high school, and here's your son, who probably inherited the same limited intellectual capacity." He turned his attention to Diego with a predatory grin. "Tell me, boy, do you plan to follow in Mommy's footsteps? Cleaning toilets for your betters? Diego felt anger rising in his throat, but he had been taught to respect adults, even cruel ones like William Peterson. Diego looked directly at William for the first time, his young face set with determination that surprised everyone in the room. "No, sir. I plan to be a translator," he said quietly, but firmly. William's laughter became even more vicious as he slapped his knee in mock delight. "A translator? Did you hear that, Maria? Your little boy thinks he's going to be a translator." The cruelty in his voice made Maria's eyes well up with tears, but Diego remained steady, his gaze never leaving William's face. "That's rich. Absolutely rich." William continued, wiping fake tears from his eyes. "What languages do you speak, boy?" "Let me guess, Spanish and broken English?" William walked over to his safe and pulled out the ancient Chinese manuscript, placing it on his desk with theatrical flourish. "This document here has stumped the best linguistic experts in Chicago. Professor Chen from Northwestern University couldn't translate it. Dr. Williams from the University of Chicago gave up after 3 weeks." William spread the yellowed pages across his marble desk, the ancient characters seeming to dance in the afternoon sunlight streaming through his floor-to-ceiling windows. 5 different professors, all with decades of experience, all with multiple degrees, all making 6-figure salaries, and none of them could crack this code. William's voice grew more animated as he built up to his cruel punchline. "But maybe a 9-year boy from the projects can succeed where PhD scholars have failed." Maria stepped forward instinctively to protect her son from whatever humiliation was coming next. "Please, Mr. Peterson, Diego is just a child. Don't involve him in this." But William waved her away dismissively. "Oh no, Maria. I want to hear what your brilliant son has to say about this impossible document. After all, he's going to be a translator someday." The sarcasm in his voice was thick enough to cut with a knife. Diego approached the desk slowly, his heart pounding but his resolve strengthening with each step. He had spent countless hours at the Chicago Public Library, not because he had to, but because he loved learning. While other kids his age were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, Diego was attending free language classes offered by community volunteers. Chinese had been his latest obsession, and he had been studying it intensively for the past 2 years. As Diego examined the manuscript, William continued his verbal assault, confident that he was about to deliver the ultimate humiliation. "You see, this is what happens when people don't know their place in society," William announced, addressing Maria but speaking loudly enough for his assistant and any nearby employees to hear. "Your son thinks he can compete with university professors, with men who have spent their entire lives studying languages and ancient texts." Diego's eyes moved across the faded characters with growing recognition. The document wasn't just random Chinese text, it was written in classical Chinese, a form of the language he had been studying through online university courses that he accessed for free at the library. More importantly, the content seemed to be philosophical in nature, discussing themes of wisdom, humility, and the true nature of wealth. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Well, boy, do you have anything to say, or are you finally ready to admit that some things are beyond people like you?" William taunted, his patience wearing thin as he waited for Diego's inevitable admission of defeat. The entire scene was playing out exactly as William had imagined it would. Soon, this arrogant child would be reduced to tears, and his mother would be reminded once again of her family's proper place in the social hierarchy. But instead of the stammering confession of ignorance that William expected, Diego looked up from the manuscript with calm, steady eyes. "Actually, sir, I can read this," he said simply. The words hung in the air like a bomb, waiting to explode. William's confident smirk faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "Excuse me?" he said, certain he had misheard. "I said I can read this document, Mr. Peterson," Diego repeated, his voice growing stronger. "It's written in classical Chinese, specifically in the style used during the Song dynasty. The calligraphy is quite beautiful, actually." Maria gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. In 9 years of being Diego's mother, she had known he was smart, but she had no idea he had been teaching himself ancient Chinese in his spare time. William's face went through a series of expressions, starting with disbelief, moving through confusion, and settling into suspicious anger. "That's impossible," he snarled. "You're just a kid from the projects. There's no way you can read something that PhD professors couldn't translate." But even as he spoke, doubt began creeping into his voice. There was something in Diego's demeanor, a quiet confidence that suggested he wasn't bluffing. "Would you like me to translate it for you, sir?" Diego asked politely. The first section discusses the nature of true wisdom versus false pride. It says that wisdom doesn't reside in golden palaces or expensive possessions, but in the ability to recognize the inherent worth of every human being. As Diego spoke, his pronunciation of the Chinese concepts was flawless, his understanding of the philosophical nuances evident in every word. William felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: genuine fear. Not physical fear, but the terror of having his entire worldview challenged by someone he had dismissed as inferior. "How?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "How is this possible?" Diego looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly despite her own shock, then back at William. "The Chicago Public Library has an excellent language program, sir. They offer free classes in over 20 languages taught by community volunteers. But classical Chinese," William stammered, trying to regain his composure. "That's not something you learn in community classes." Diego shook his head respectfully. "You're right, sir. I learned classical Chinese through MIT's OpenCourseWare program. They offer free online courses in ancient languages. I've been studying it for 2 years, along with modern Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean. I'm also working on Arabic and Portuguese." The revelation hit William like a physical blow. While he had been spending thousands of dollars on country club memberships and expensive dinners, this boy had been acquiring a world-class education for free, driven by nothing but curiosity and determination. "6 languages?" William asked weakly. "You speak 6 languages?" Diego nodded modestly. "I'm fluent in English and Spanish, obviously. Conversational in Mandarin, Japanese, and Korean. And I can read classical Chinese and Arabic at an intermediate level." Block 6. William sank into his leather chair as if all the air had been sucked out of his body. For 43 years he had believed that intelligence and education were luxuries that only money could buy. He had attended private schools and an Ivy League university, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on his education. Yet this 9 years boy from a working-class family had surpassed him intellectually, using nothing but free resources and pure determination. "Continue reading," William said hoarsely, his voice barely above a whisper. Diego returned his attention to the manuscript, his young voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom as he translated the classical Chinese characters. The text goes on to say that those who use their position to diminish others reveal the poverty of their own souls. True strength lies not in the ability to humiliate the vulnerable, but in lifting them up. Each word was like a dagger to William's heart. The ancient Chinese philosopher who had written this text centuries ago seemed to be speaking directly to him, exposing the emptiness of his cruel behavior and the hollowness of his character. It also says that when a person of great material wealth discovers wisdom in an unexpected place, he faces a choice: embrace humility and grow, or remain blind and lose everything that truly matters. Maria watched in amazement as her son, whom she had always known was special but had never imagined was this extraordinary, calmly dismantled the worldview of one of Chicago's most powerful men. Diego's voice remained steady and respectful throughout, never mocking or gloating, simply sharing knowledge with the same generosity that had been shown to him by his volunteer teachers at the library. William felt tears forming in his eyes for the first time in decades. "How many hours?" he asked suddenly. "How many hours do you study each week?" Diego considered the question seriously. "Maybe 25 or 30 hours, sir, after school and on weekends. My mom works such long hours that I have a lot of free time, so I spend it at the library. Learning it's fun for me." The simplicity of Diego's answer shattered something fundamental in William's chest. While he had been using his wealth to acquire status symbols and exercise power over others, this remarkable boy had been quietly building an intellectual foundation that put most university graduates to shame. 25 hours a week, William repeated, more to himself than to anyone else. That's more than most college students study." "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson," Diego said suddenly, causing William to look up in confusion. "Sorry for what?" William asked. "I'm sorry that those professors couldn't translate your document. It really is beautiful. The philosopher talks about how true leadership means serving others, not ruling over them. He says that the greatest honor isn't in being feared, but in being trusted with someone's vulnerability." William realized that Diego was actually apologizing for the professor's failure, not gloating about his own success. The boy's humility and grace in the face of triumph made William's earlier cruelty seem even more monstrous. "Diego," William said, his voice cracking with emotion, "I owe you and your mother an apology. Actually, I owe you both much more than that." Maria stepped forward protectively, unsure of where this conversation was heading. 6 years of experience had taught her to be wary of powerful men who suddenly showed emotion. "Mr. Peterson, we should probably get back to our work," she said carefully, but William held up his hand. "No, please, I need to say this. Diego, what you've accomplished is extraordinary. What I said earlier was inexcusable." "Thank you, sir," Diego replied simply. "But I didn't do anything special. I just used the resources that were available to me. Anyone could do the same thing if they wanted to." William shook his head in wonder. Even now, faced with the opportunity to claim superiority over the man who had humiliated him, Diego remained humble and encouraging. This boy possessed a wisdom that had nothing to do with languages or ancient texts. William stood up slowly, feeling as if he were seeing his office, his life, and himself clearly for the first time in years. "Diego, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "Really?" he asked. Diego thought for a moment before answering. "I want to work for the United Nations as a translator and cultural liaison. I think language is how we build bridges between people who might otherwise never understand each other." The answer hit William like a revelation. While he had spent his career building walls between himself and others, this 9 years boy dreamed of building bridges. That's a beautiful goal," William said softly. "But don't you want to make money? Don't you want to be rich and powerful?" Diego looked puzzled by the question. "Money is useful, sir, but it's not the goal. My mom taught me that the point of learning is to help others, not just to help yourself." William looked at Maria with new eyes, seeing not just a cleaning lady, but a woman who had raised a philosopher while working multiple jobs to keep her family afloat. "Maria," he said, his voice filled with respect for the first time in 6 years. "How did you raise such an incredible son?" Maria's eyes filled with tears as she looked between her extraordinary boy and the man who was finally seeing his true worth. "I just tried to teach him that everyone deserves respect, no matter what job they do or how much money they have," Maria replied quietly. "I told him that intelligence is a gift meant to be shared, not hoarded." William felt the full weight of his own failures crushing down on him. This woman, whom he had treated as invisible for years, had been raising a genius while he had been playing petty power games. "Diego, Maria," William said, his voice steady despite the emotional storm raging inside him. "I have a proposition for you both, but first I need to make something very clear. Everything I said earlier was wrong. I was wrong, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for the person I've been." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of Chicago traffic far below. William Peterson's transformation didn't happen overnight, but it began that very day. He established the Diego Santos Scholarship Fund, providing full educational support for gifted children from working-class families. Maria was promoted to Director of Community Outreach, where her natural wisdom and understanding of people's needs made her invaluable. Diego continued his studies, eventually becoming the youngest translator ever hired by the United Nations at age 22. 5 years later, William would often be found in the Chicago Public Library, not as a patron seeking free education, but as a volunteer teacher sharing his business knowledge with anyone who wanted to learn. The ancient Chinese manuscript that had changed everything was framed in his office, but now it served as a daily reminder of the lesson Diego had taught him. True wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the positive impact we have on others' lives. The most powerful moment came when Diego, now 19 and fluent in 12 languages, returned to Peterson Tech Industries to deliver a presentation about cross-cultural communication to William's executive team. As he watched Diego command the room with the same quiet confidence he had shown as a 9 years boy, William realized that he had witnessed something truly rare. The moment when genuine wisdom met genuine power, and wisdom had won. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. Diego Santos proved that brilliance isn't confined to expensive schools or wealthy families. It flourishes wherever curiosity meets opportunity. His story reminds us that true intelligence lies not in what we know, but in how we use that knowledge to lift others up. What do you think about Diego's incredible journey? Have you ever encountered someone who completely changed your perspective on intelligence and success? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. If this video touched your heart the way it touched mine, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that prove extraordinary people are all around us, waiting to be discovered.